Welcome to episode 41 of the Everyday Sens podcast. I am Jack Richardson, as always, joined by Brendan Parks, but we have a special guest for this one. Those on YouTube already can see, but if you're joining on the audio, we have Brandon Plant from Sens Talk joining us today. We're doing a little part 1 and part 2 collaboration here, and this is going to be part 1, which will be on our channel. Part 2 will be coming out later on Sens Talk on YouTube. So, Brandon, thanks for joining us today, and how you doing?
Absolute pleasure, boys, and it's a pleasure to be here. I can't say it enough. We just kind of spoke about it a few seconds ago before rolling here, and really proud of you guys. You know, it's great the work that you guys are doing. The community is growing, and the content that this community is making is so great, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. You guys are doing great work, and I'm really excited to do this mini series with you guys and a lot of future collaborations as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to have you. Obviously, you're kind of the OG, the YouTube kind of podcast guy here on Sens content. So it's awesome to have you on, and for sure, we're excited to do this. It was your idea, so it's thanks for doing that. And yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. I mean, there's Sens hockey tomorrow, right? So that's kind of crazy to me. It's not something I was ready for. I thought we still had a little bit here, and look at the schedule. There's hockey, there's training camp, so we've got a lot to get into. I know Jack, though, he read a few things, got a little heated before this, so we're gonna start off with a little something that he's got going.
Yeah, I feel like we're on a streak here, Brennan, of right before we record, stuff comes out because we had the Sokolov signing that came out, so it's all lining up for us. The stars are aligning. This one's not really, I mean, it wasn't a breaking news thing, but it's kind of been lingering since the trade. We're going to talk about DeBrincat here for a little bit, and before anyone gets up in arms, because I think it's a good debate either way. He clearly like there's going to be more that comes out, I believe, and I'd imagine when the two teams get at it in the regular season, which is October 21st, the Red Wings will be in Ottawa. There's going to be some quotes, some questions, like it's going to be a storyline, but we're getting going early here. So I want to be careful who I say was the article was from first. But it was during Detroit media, like their opening press conferences, a lot was going on, and they asked DeBrincat pointedly, and this is like the first part of the article when you go click on it, how he can get back to his 40 goal stature, right? And I'm going to read what DeBrincat said, and then we can go from there. So DeBrincat says, quote, "A lot of it is in different looks in different situations. I've got to focus a little more on bearing down when I get my chances. I think last year I gave up a lot of chances and maybe got lazy on it or whatever it may be, hit a post, stuff like that. I think a lot of it was like that. I'm pretty comfortable getting back to that form, and obviously we have a lot of great players here to play with, so I'll just try to find the space out there, and they'll get me the puck." I'll let you guys go with it first. So, Brendan, we'll go to you. You're the guest. Early thoughts on that quote, because that's the meat and potatoes of it. That's what people are running with on Twitter right now as we speak. So what did you think about all that?
Yeah, I looked at that article rather quickly because, like you said, it was like 5 minutes ago. And I don't like to overreact often. And, I like to get emotional. I'm very passionate, but I like to be very selective when I do. And I'm going to do that here. What I will say is, while the quotes don't really bother me that much, he's not on the team anymore, whatever. What bothers me is the fact that he's so nonchalant about the fact that he was lazy last year. Ottawa missed the playoffs by 6 points. Those games, like the 5-1 losses to like Vancouver and Chicago, I mean, imagine he put in a bit more effort with his teammates. Maybe we win 3 of those games. We're in the playoffs. I mean, I'm not saying we missed the playoffs purely because DeBrincat being lazy, but when we missed by that little, and it was, even if it didn't work out, like, you shouldn't be nonchalant about being a lazy player. You're still making millions. People are paying a lot of money to watch you play every single night. And he mentioned some stuff about teammates and how he's going to do really well in Detroit because he's got great teammates. I don't think that's a shot towards the guys in the Ottawa locker room. I think they've gotten along just fine, to be honest. But once again, I think it's really weird to be so nonchalant about, like, I was lazy last year, kind of. I could have probably played a little better, but c'est la vie. I think that's really weird, and I would expect the Boo Birds to be out in a big way October 21st. I might be one of the ones joining in, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's now rightfully so. I mean, I was kind of a DeBrincat defender. We talked about DJ Smith defenders last episode. I was a DeBrincat defender before we traded them, in the sense that I thought they probably could have paid him and made it work, even though it would have sucked this offseason. Seeing the quotes, and he did a media availability right after he got traded too with Steve Yzerman, said something similar where he was like, it came across in a sort of like shot towards Ottawa and his teammates, and it's just not what you like to see, obviously. I thought the same thing, and you said 6 points out of the playoffs. They also lost 7 games in a row, I think it was, by 1 goal in November. not including empty nets. And I mean, DeBrincat probably hit like 10 posts in that span. I mean, this guy was hitting posts almost every night. And if he could have just scored one of those, obviously, maybe they end up winning a couple and making the playoffs. So to hear him, yeah, I'm with you with the nonchalant type of shtick he's got going here. I don't really understand why he's so like open about the fact that he was lazy last year. I mean, that's obviously he didn't ask to get traded to Ottawa, but at the same time, like it's a sport, right? You're a professional athlete, you get traded there. It sucks to see that for sure. And I don't know if I was taking it as a shot towards his teammates, but that's certainly how it comes across. I don't know if that's how he meant it. I'd have to listen to the actual availability. I mean, I didn't like dislike him as a person or a player when he was here. I thought he came across as somewhat of a leader and seemed to be, invested. But as it turns out, this is something that's pretty disappointing to see. And of course, DeBrincat, like it's easy to dislike him now because he's also playing for the Detroit Red Wings, who are a division rival, right? So I think it's going to be easy to cheer against him because not only did he kind of like push his way out of Ottawa, who after we gave up a 7th overall pick for him, but then he goes to a rival, and yeah, it's his hometown team. I don't care. Like it's a rival team who we're going to be competing with. They're on the same timeline as us. So yeah, I mean, I'm expecting the Boo Birds to be out as well. This is a guy who he had every chance to kind of make it right with Ottawa and the fans, and he chose to go the opposite path. And again, completely up to him. Like if he wants to go home, I'm not going to blame him for that. But at the same time, like he can't blame the fans of Ottawa for being upset with him, especially when he's made like 4 different remarks kind of criticizing the team and his own performance last year, right? So that's my take on it.
Yeah, look, I've got some thoughts on this. I was a DeBrincat guy. I was with you, Brennan. I think that's fair. Like throughout the whole process, we were on team. Let's try and keep him regardless of the money because they'd be in a cap bind and they're in one anyway without him. So we were going to end up here anyway. But my problem is this. It's like, yeah, you came here when you didn't choose to, and that's completely fine. Hundreds and hundreds of players in the NHL go through that on a daily basis or a yearly basis. It always happens. And the problem for me is he came and the line that just like sticks out to me though is maybe got lazy on it or gave up on my chances. Like this is a guy who was a top 5 goal scorer in the NHL from the time he came in before he came to Ottawa. Those guys don't grow on trees and they're not normal hockey players. You mean to tell me that you were you don't give up on your goal scoring chances? And maybe I'm like you need to watch the video. I think a video is attached in the article. And I did not mention, actually, it's from freep.com. I believe it's obviously a blog that covers the Red Wings, was in the press room. But there's a video attached to it. I haven't watched the quote, but to me, this is almost one I don't really need to see because it could have been a throw in like, yeah, I got lazy or gave up on my chances. But if you're a goal scorer, like imagine if Alex Ovechkin came out last season and said, I gave up on some of my chances. It'd be ridiculous. Everyone would shake their heads. This guy was advertised as a 40 goal scorer coming to Ottawa to provide them with that even strength goal scoring they needed. He came and got 27 goals, had 13, 12 at even strength, and was a minus 35 or a minus 30. He just wasn't good enough. And I don't think that this kind of quote from him is fair to Ottawa at all. And I'm like you guys, I don't think it's a shot at the teammates. I don't think that'd be fair. Even if he gave a shot at, later on in the article, he kind of talks about how he needs to have a better 200-foot game. He had a better one before Ottawa, but I don't even then, I don't take that as a shot to DJ Smith or the staff or whatever it is. That's just the way it is. But it's not even that it's a shot to anyone in general. My problem with it is that like he's basically admitting or nonchalantly admitting, like you guys said, that he wasn't giving as much effort as he could have. And the Locked On guys have been pointing it out on Twitter as we speak right now. And Lalise Martian as well pointed out, like he didn't give a post on social media really thanking the Ottawa fans, I don't believe. And yeah, you were here for 1 year, but like, man, it's such a blanket statement now for every player to do that. And this isn't a guy who's a ghost on social media. Like he's on there. He's got Twitter and everything. When he came to Ottawa, he was very forefront about being, like, oh, we're the underdog, kind of like a Michael Andlauer situation. He pulled we're in between Toronto, Montreal card and got everyone on his side. And then nothing when he left, when he basically forced his way out, forced Pierre Dorion's hand to make a trade with one team, with one of the GMs who is considered one of the best GMs in the league, is going to find a way to swindle you. Like I have so many issues with this, and it's not even like I don't blame the guy for wanting to go home. I don't blame him for not being comfortable in Ottawa because that's not always going to happen. And we're all from the area, like we grew up here, whatever it is, so we understand the value that Ottawa has. My biggest problem though is just like give effort, man. You're a millionaire playing hockey. So if he's legit admitting that he didn't give effort and gave up on chances as a goal scorer, It's ridiculous to me. I've no time for that.
Well, wouldn't you think he'd feel guilty too? Like that's kind of the other thing is, he comes in and he says this whole underdog thing and you love it, but then no post, he openly admits to being kind of lazy last year and not necessarily fitting, whatever. Like you'd think there'd be a little bit of guilt there in the fact that Ottawa also gave up a lot to get him, right? Like a 7th overall pick, even though we thought it was like good value at the time, and really for what he was, it was good value. But like it's still a 7th overall pick, and Kevin Korchinski could become a really good NHL player, right? In the trade, you can think whatever you want of the trade with Detroit. I still feel like as DeBrincat, he should feel like Ottawa gave up a lot to get him, right? They wanted him. They're a team who, regardless of what he wanted, they wanted him. They brought him in, and then he's basically saying he didn't really care that much last year, and then didn't really say sorry or anything. I mean, it's just weird to me in a way.
Yeah, look, it's certainly a tough look. Let's just be honest about it. But numbers speak for themselves in the National Hockey League. If he does well next year, it's not going to matter. I mean, that's just what it's going to take. You've seen some of the players have came back to the National Hockey League. Some of these players have come back, that shouldn't be back. They're back because of their skill. So this is not comparing those type of situations, of course, to Alex DeBrincat. But the point is, if the numbers speak for themselves, GMs are not going to care about his past comments on or taking shots towards other teams. Because, look, if he doesn't do well again next year, I mean, this is even more of a tough look for Alex DeBrincat. You kind of talk terribly about your former team, who kind of give you a great shot in all positions, and then you just don't show up at the team that you wanted to be with to begin with. So he's betting on himself, which you kind of have to respect in a little way there. But at the same time, I mean, if he doesn't perform, his numbers go down. He's not only made an enemy here in Ottawa, he's kind of made a fool of himself by being so harsh in a way towards the situation here in Ottawa. And yeah, I guess the numbers will just speak for themselves. I mean, if he comes back next year, scores 40 goals, and by the way, that's very possible. Detroit does have some good players. I don't think anyone, especially over there in Michigan, is going to care about these comments. And here in Ottawa, those comments won't weigh much anyways, because he could be a 40-goal scorer again. But, if he continues to play like an average or above average player, 25, 30 goals, 60 or so points, which is very good, by the way, it's going to be a really tough look for him. So we'll see what happens, but it's certainly a big year coming up for Alex DeBrincat.
It really is. And one last thing here on DeBrincat, it's like if you're Detroit, and yeah, these comments probably they'll just brush them off, and it's like, who cares what he's talking about his last team? I want to know what he thinks about Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin and his new line mates. But if you're Yzerman, or if you're anyone in the Detroit organization and you've committed, yeah, it's a steal of a contract and it's a crazy deal in general.
Yeah.
But if you've committed this term and money to him and like one of the highest paid players on your team, and you hear that he got lazy last year from his own words, I don't like that. I wouldn't like that at all. And like, I'm not painting a narrative. I was on Team DeBrincat all of last season. I loved watching him play. He was one of my favorite players. And when he was on, he was on. I think there was a bit of a bit going on with myself in the Locked On podcast. Like we started this trend of every time he scored, like I think the record was something like 21-2 when DeBrincat scored a goal, and which is crazy. And like some people would point it out, be like, oh yeah, when your best players score, they win. But there was a point in the year where they were 8-8 when Claude Giroux scored. Like it was a direct correlation to the team winning when Alex DeBrincat put the puck in the net. And then you hear this where he got lazy and gave up on some chances. It drives me insane. This could have been a playoff team last year, like you guys said. So
he was a key player. That's the thing. He was a key player more than people realize, right? He just from this makes it seem like if he would have just tried like 10% harder, they probably would have made the playoffs, which is terrible.
Yeah, and another last thing, and like recently, kind of, it wasn't really recent news, and that was my mistake a little bit, but it was in Bruce Garriock's article in the offseason roundup that he wasn't happy playing behind Brady Tkachuk. Yeah. And to me, I think that if it was news at the time, it got swept under the rug because I didn't see it. That's a huge deal as well, because that's a huge narrative for this thing as well. So if you're like the attraction of getting DeBrincat for the Sens was to have a top line talent on your second line, and he wasn't that. He was honestly a disappointing 5-on-5 second line player for most of last season. So it's disappointing. Final thing, are you guys going to be booing him? I know we kind of mentioned that already. If you were there, if we are going to be there, October 21st, Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, a 1 p.m. game in that one, will we be booing Alex DeBrincat?
I'll say this. I was like both of you. I was very much on Team DeBrincat. I used to love saying meow in the videos and during the games and on Twitter. I'm going to miss that. I'm not going to lie. But I got into a bit of a Twitter spat with Williams Martian just at the beginning of the saga because I thought it would be terrible to boo Alex DeBrincat, considering, look, he wants to go back home. He's got a young family. It makes sense. I understand that. But as things have carried on and, the trade has happened and the comments that have kind of come up afterwards, I mean, I've completely done a 180. I'm going to boo him for sure. And, it's nothing to do with the fact that he didn't want to play here. I totally understand that. The guy's young. He has a life that goes beyond hockey, and that has to come into play. But, when you're openly saying, once again, you came here, you're making millions of dollars, people are spending a lot of money every single night to watch you play, and you're not putting in that effort, I mean, yeah, I'm going to boo you. What the hell is that? That's nonsense. So that's, I guess, an entitled type of kind of thing that he has going on there too. I don't know what that is, but to really think that it's okay to play half-ass in a way, it's crazy to me. So I'll boo him for sure, and I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one.
Well, he dug his own grave in my mind. That's the way that I see it. He just dug his own grave. Like, he came out and he said this stuff. He didn't have to say anything like this. He could have just, like, it's nice to see players maybe giving their honest opinion, but at the same time, like, when we're on the negative side of it, we're going to be kind of, upset about it. So I think he dug his own grave with Sens fans, and I really don't think there's going to be a lot of fans who are still defending him at all. I think when he got traded, people were, including myself. I was like upset about it, but also kind of understanding his perspective. Now it's more like, hey, you're going a little over the line here for no real reason. So I won't be there, but I'll be booing from my my TV for sure in my living room. So yeah.
Support for Everyday Sens podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SENS20 at manscaped.com. The Performance Package 4.0 arrived for me, and honestly, guys, it's a game changer. I didn't really think I needed half the stuff in there, but once you start using it, you realize how important the hygiene is in that down there area. I think men's hygiene is kind of overlooked a lot of the time, and in this day and age, it's kind of on its way back up, or even just back in general. So the Performance Package includes the Lawnmower 4.0, which is the main trimmer. They've got a nose and hair trimmer as well, including a bunch of deodorant products for that down there area. And it's honestly like they include a wash kit, a t-shirt, a pair of underwear. It's the full works in that Performance Package. Even if you don't think you need all of that stuff, I recommend just trying out the Lawnmower 4.0, One of the products alone is worth the time and the price, especially with Everyday Sens promotion with the SENS20 code. So again, that's get 20% off and free shipping with the code SENS20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code SENS20. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Now let's get back to the Everyday Sens podcast. Yeah, so that we'll wrap that up on DeBrincat. We'll obviously talk about it. Like I said, there's going to be storylines all over the place when they face on October 21st. They're playing each other in Sweden, which is kind of like the only home game in Ottawa against the Red Wings is October 21st, I believe, because that's a home game in Sweden, home game. So that'll be the only chance this season, but obviously the next 3-4 years. All right, boys, let's get into another segment here that we're going to talk about. This is kind of an idea that you had, Brandon, just to get the ball rolling, essentially. Obviously, training camp's underway here, but we're going to talk about battles to follow. So we're recording here on Saturday night. This is going to be, I believe, live Sunday, maybe even tonight. Not putting pressure there on Brennan. I'm kidding. But exhibition games start tomorrow. They play the Leafs on Sunday and then again on Monday in Toronto. So split squads, Wednesday against Montreal. We kind of know some details of the roster and everything like that, but obviously it's a full training camp squad going into these games. So we're going to do some battles to follow. We're going to talk about competition. And honestly, for the first time in a long time, it feels like most positions on this team are set, but there's still a few battles to be had. So Brandon, we're going to start with you here. And what battle do you want to focus on most going into Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I've been following DJ Smith and everyone has said already, don't look at the lines, don't pay too much attention, they're going to change. But there's been one line that's really been stuck together throughout this camp, and it's potentially the future fourth line for this year. Some could call it even the projected fourth line. It's the fourth line of Parker Kelly, Mark Kaslick, and Zach McEwen. Now, look, I like Mark Kaslick. This guy's got like a 57% faceoff rate. He's an NHLer. He's an ideal fourth line guy. Cheap. If he could chip in a few more goals, that would be great. But the fact he wins nearly 6 out of 10 faceoffs is absurd. Absolute NHLer, no issue with that. Zach McEwen, he signed for 3 years. He's an NHLer. He doesn't get many points, but you need that grit, especially when you're playing like Ottawa does. You need that grit there. McEwen will be at least the 13th forward, maybe on that 12th position on the right side. And then Parker Kelly there. I mean, I personally think, and this is no slant towards Parker Kelly, I'm sure he's a great person, but last year he was a massive disappointment. And I used to be a huge fan of Parker Kelly a couple years ago. He really exploded onto the scene. But last year, he really didn't show enough to warrant a guaranteed spot in the National Hockey League. So the two guys in that fourth line, because the third line, without that Joseph trade and the Pinto signing, who knows? But for that fourth line, Kaslik and McEwen are shoo-ins. I think they're guaranteed to be in the National Hockey League. Parker Kelly's going to have to battle along, guys like Igor Sokolov, Yuri Smejkal, Josh Bailey. So naming some of those guys, Josh Bailey, this is a guy that has a lot of experience with the coaching staff here in Ottawa. DJ Smith, of course, coached him in the OHL. Jack Capiano was his head coach with the New York Islanders during his best seasons in his NHL career. He wouldn't have come here after being bought out by Chicago on a PTO if he didn't think he could get a contract. So I don't see a way he's not signed, to be honest with you. I really just don't see it, especially considering this guy probably could have got a contract somewhere else. So Josh Bailey is somebody you really should watch because he's signed to a PTO, so he's going to have to work. He's not going to be guaranteed a spot, but he's going to get a good opportunity too. So he's going to definitely show out, I think, in camp and preseason. 25 points last year in 64 games. It's nothing highlight reel. It's nothing that's going to pop out to you. But at the same time, consider this. He would have been the leading goal scorer or point producer, pardon me, in that bottom six last year. And the other guy that would have been second, Derek Brassard, might not play again. Hopefully I'm wrong. I hope he comes back, but doesn't look that way. So Josh Bailey already is an upgrade, especially on that fourth line, which won't have a lot of offense. Igor Sokolov, Sharkalov, friend of the show for you guys as well, is a guy that every Sens fan loves. He's an absolute beauty. I really do hope he gets a true opportunity this year. Last year on that fourth line, he got 13 games. He played like 6-7 minutes. I mean, this guy, it's a make or break year for him, just on a 1-year deal. If he doesn't make the full-time roster this year in the National Hockey League, he's probably gone from the Sens organization this time next year, and I really hope that's not the case. So watch out for Igor Sokolov, who had 59 points, including 21 goals last year in the AHL in 70 games played. The only thing that's holding him back is his skating, but he worked with Shelly Kettles, the skating coach, and I think that's going to do wonders for him. He's been training all summer. He knows how big of a season this is. This is the biggest season in his hockey career. So Sokolov's the kind of guy that I'd slip on, that fourth line for sure on the right wing kind of things, because he's a guy that can bring some offense to that fourth line. Look, McEwen, Kaslik, Kelly, Bailey, these guys aren't going to be the top, point producers on any team, especially on the fourth line. Sokolov's a guy that's been the leading producer of points in the AHL with the Everyday Sens. Now, he's not going to get 59 points, of course, on that fourth line, but he can absolutely contribute, a good amount of goals for a fourth line type player. And most importantly, he didn't look out of place defensively last year, so it never hurts to bring in more offense for the fourth line. Last guy I'll mention before I let you guys kind of mention your battles, and then we can go back and forth, would be Yuri Smejkal. Just want to mention this guy really quickly. Last year in the SHL, 49 games, 23 goals, 43 total points. Power forward, another guy that can kind of like Brady Tkachuk, less of a good player, of course, but Brady Tkachuk in the way in which he's got a good shot, sure, but a lot of his goals come from around the crease. And for the fourth line, when your fourth line, especially on a DJ Smith-led team, it's already going to be a very physical type of fourth line. Having a guy that, can play physically, he's a huge guy, that can also use that physicality to, produce points and goals, is somebody that is a sneaky option there for that fourth line, even as a call-up, because he's non-waiver eligible. He won't have to go through waivers. So even as a call-up, this is the kind of guy we might see. And then, of course, there's other guys like Angus Crookshank, who I think should get a few games this year. Of course, Roby Yarventi might get some opportunities, and maybe Tyler Boucher and Matthew Highmore and a couple other guys. But yeah, the two guys I really would look at, or the three guys, pardon me, would be Sokolov, Smejkal, and Josh Bailey, because those three are going to really be competing with Kaslik and McEwen, and I guess Parker Kelly. That's going to be your battle for the fourth line. So you essentially have two lines battling for, or 6 players or 7 players battling for 3 spots. So it should be interesting.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and then we can tee up on that one about the fourth line. So since there's so many guys in and around it, I'll go to you first here, Brennan. Would you rather it be a mix of those 6 guys rotating in and out all year long, or would you rather have a set fourth line, obviously health permitting, across the whole team because people are going to move up and down? But would you rather have a set fourth line with maybe 4 guys rotating, or would you rather see them like implement all these other guys, on a daily basis on that fourth line?
I'd rather have a set fourth line. I think for me, like it's tough because like Brandon said, right now they've been running Kelly Castelic McEwen as the fourth line in camp, and I think that that's going to be a line who, like on paper, it looks like one of those gritty fourth lines, but I think fans are very quickly going to turn against that line because they're not going to have any puck possession and they're just going to be like bruisers. And bruisers are good, sure, but like puck possession is what you need to be a good team. And obviously it's the fourth line, whatever. But like again, Parker Kelly, I mean, he had 16 points over his last 96 games, right? And I mean, he throws a lot of hits. That's good. But he also, they kind of got abused in the defensive zone last year. It's just something to watch. So if it's just those guys rotating in and out, like I don't like that a whole lot. I'd rather get some of the other guys in. But at the same time, knowing DJ Smith, I think we are probably going to see that line start. Yeah, we can ask Brandon too. Like, what do you want to set fourth line, or do you kind of want to rotate some guys in, see some of the younger guys experiment a little bit? Like, what are you thinking?
Absolutely rotate it because look, no offense to Parker Kelly and Zach McEwen and stuff, but they play a very similar game. They both hit, they're both physical. That's great, but you don't need 2 of those guys on that fourth line. Especially once again, Mark Kastelic, he wins nearly 58% of his faceoffs. That is a great possession center right there. That guy's going to win you a lot of possession opportunities. Why are you wasting it with guys that have nulled offensive abilities? Okay, no offense once again, but if you're going to have a guy that's a bruiser, I support that. You need that, especially with a lot of star players on the fourth line. I totally get that. That's why McEwen's here. I support that. But you can't have 2 of those guys on that fourth line. McEwen's the guy that I would keep. Parker Kelly's the guy I would send down. I don't think he'd get picked up, especially 16 points in 96 games played. I mean, Zach could get picked up more likely than not. And then you can have a couple of guys rotate in there because Igor Sokolov, even if he's the 13th forward, that's a step up than just continuing in the Belleville in the AHL. He has nothing left to prove. He's like a 2-time All-Star. He's led Belleville in scoring 2-3 years in a row now. It's enough. He's ready for the jump. And whether he's not starting every game, it doesn't matter to me as long as he's getting those opportunities and it's in the full. So I would love to see Mark Kastelic, Zach McEwen, Josh Bailey get a contract once we have the space, hopefully, for that, because I think that's a little bit of offense that can help for that fourth line. And then, of course, Igor Sokolov as well, because once again, with a guy like Mark Kastelic, there is some offensive, potential for this fourth line, because if you can win faceoffs, if you have the right guys next to him, offense will come. So Sokolov and Bailey with McEwen and Kastelic are the 4 players I would rotate for that out of those 3 spots on that fourth line.
Yeah, I like those picks. I'm curious to see Josh Bailey. I believe he is playing tomorrow, so Sunday,
Yes.
against the Leafs at home. So we'll watch him closely in camp. I like Crookshank. I think his play style suits that fourth line perfectly. We've talked about it with Ridley Gregg as well, and depending what trades happen and for cap reasons for Shane Pinto to sign, like there might even be a spot on that fourth line, or the third line, sorry. So there's room like for more of these guys to play. And I really like Crookshank. I think he's looked really good from the videos on people's phones that we've seen of the scrimmages. So yeah, we'll follow the fourth line battle. I think that's gonna be a good one because again, like all this talk about the top 9 being pretty much set more or less for the last 2 years, really. So the fourth line has really been a bit of a crutch for them, like you said. But I agree as well. I think Mark Kastelic is probably the one staple there. I think he's a perfect fourth line center, like you said. Wins draws, he's big, and I think he can give you more offensively than you got last season as well. So let's move on now.
I have one more point on the fourth line before we go to the next one. Just the fact that for Sokolov and Bailey, I think the third line role is so like the potential of that is so crucial for them. Just because I want to see if Sokolov and Bailey too, like Bailey had 11 hits in 64 games last year. Again, we don't want the fourth line to be bruisers necessarily. We want to have some possession, but like, can a guy like Josh Bailey, who's, he's a year removed from a 44-point season, he's been more offensive in his career, and he's not physical or gritty necessarily. Same with Sokolov. He's big, but he plays a more offensively styled game, right? Can they fit in a bottom 6 or fourth line kind of gritty type of role? Because if they can, it's going to be tough for them to stick, especially on a DJ Smith-led team. Not like if I ran the team, it might be a little different. I might want them to really focus on possession. I know DJ Smith, and I know that if they are not playing gritty and they're not fitting that kind of physical style of role, they're not going to be on that fourth line. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that out there too, because if like a Joseph gets traded and they've got a third line spot, then maybe a Sokolov or Bailey fits in there better than they would on the fourth line.
I just wanted to mention quickly, sorry boys, just about Angus Crookshank. Love the guy, beauty, just like Igor Sokolov. I mean, this guy's gonna be a fan favorite when he's called up eventually. But he's such a good prospect, and especially coming off that major injury, which cost him an entire season a little bit ago. I mean, I think they're going to want him to over marinate once again in the AHL. He will get NHL minutes this year, mark my words on that. But I think this time next year is the year where it's going to be like, okay, now is my time to really make that jump to the National Hockey League. There's just too many names involved right now, in my opinion. And that third line hole, I guess you can call it, is interesting. I agree. A guy like Josh Bailey could be good there. A guy like Igor Sokolov could be great there. So I think it's a really good point to point out, no pun intended, that third line might have some of these fourth line guys on it as well. So that kind of opens up some opportunities as well for other guys. So yeah, like you guys have already mentioned, that's gonna be really interesting to see. But like you Jack mentioned, tomorrow when Josh Bailey plays and Zach McEwen also plays, I'm really excited to see how they do because they have a lot to prove. There's no guaranteed spots here on that fourth line or really in that bottom six right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like there's so many guys, and this is the point the team should be at where it shouldn't be prioritizing development because let's be real here, all due respect to all those guys, none of them are going to be your franchise players down the line, right? Most likely. I'm saving myself there just in case Angus Crookshank becomes the next Alfie, but like most likely they're not going to be. So while they prioritize development with guys like Batherson and Norris and Stutzel, Kachuk, and Sanderson started in the NHL, but development was prioritized for them as well. It should just be best players play. Like whoever shows up to camp, whoever shows up this week, whoever shows you that they're ready to play in the NHL should make it. And I think that goes for Josh Bailey. That goes for Crookshank, Sokolov. I think Sokolov's going to have a huge camp. I'm really excited to see him with that fresh paycheck as well. So, Brendan, let's move into your battle that you want to watch in camp. We're going to stray a little bit away from the fourth line and I'll let you tee it up there.
Yeah, so we're going to move from offense to defense here for mine. So then we're going to get into a little bit of Eric Brandstrom versus Tyler Kleven. Now, this is interesting because Eric Brandstrom is someone who we on this podcast and many others absolutely love. He's an analytics darling. He's someone who really stepped up last year, was actually one of their better defensive players last year, even though he's obviously undersized. That's kind of followed him through his career. But yeah, he's a great two-way guy, kind of broke out. I expect another kind of step forward this year. I think he's kind of ready for more opportunity, but I don't know if he's going to get it in Ottawa just because they've got Shabbat, Chikrin, Sanderson, Zub. It's going to be tough for him to find more minutes, even on the power play. Like he'd be great on the power play, but is there a chance for him to do it? Probably not here, right? So regardless, I think Brandstrom comes in as the favorite to play with Travis Hamonic on the third pairing entering the season. He's been doing that in camp so far, and he's someone who DJ Smith seems to have become a little more fond of recently after being a little bit down on him through his first couple of years here. But then we talk about Tyler Kleven, and Tyler Kleven, who's young and just came in last year, he played 7 games, I want to say 8 games at the end of the year. He didn't get a huge opportunity, but he did look very good. He impressed Jack and I for sure with the way he was moving the puck because he's a massive kind of hulking defenseman, very physical, but he was making good decisions, right? He was very comfortable looking with the puck, which was unexpected. Looked really good in the game at the rookie showcase, and now he's coming into camp. And from everything we've heard, he's looked really good at camp too. So Kleven is someone who Pierre Dorion put like him in the untouchables column when they were talking about Jacob Chikrin trades, which is a big deal. Like that's a column. Like if you're considered an untouchable to the GM, this organization values you at a very high level, right? So I think Kleven is someone who they definitely see being in their defensive scheme for many years, which kind of means Eric Brandstrom, does he fit or is he going to get moved out? Maybe they move him to the right side, but at the same time, then you've got like 5 left shot defensemen potentially. It just seems like long term here, maybe Eric Brandstrom isn't the fit because he should get more opportunity. He might not fit with Kleven coming in. And obviously, let's talk about DJ Smith again. He loves size, he loves physicality, he loves grit. Tyler Kleven embodies DJ Smith and what he loves. So I'm interested to see this battle for the fact that I think Brandstrom will start, assuming he doesn't get traded and to make space for Pinto. I think he will start the year in Ottawa, and Kleven might start in the AHL. But I'm very curious to see if potentially Kleven even at some point he's probably going to push him out. But does he push him out this early, and does DJ Smith just fall in love with Tyler Kleven? Because right now, like the team has to win, the expectations are there, jobs are on the line. Like if Kleven plays better than Brandstrom in the preseason, let's say, like hypothetically, like if we all watch him and everybody's on the consensus if Kleven looks better than Brandstrom, then I mean, like the team has to win. So do they just make a tough decision and part ways with Brandstrom right there? I hope not, because I love Brandstrom, but it's going to be one of the best battles to watch during camp and preseason, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I completely agree with that. And look, I love Eric Brandstrom. I'm a huge fan. And I think, once again, I always say this, especially with prospects. Even if Tyler Clevin had a fantastic short stint in the National Hockey League near the end of last year, and he did. He looked not out of place whatsoever. And his physicality, and I always say this with NCAA, the physical nature of the NCAA helps those prospects really easily transition to the NHL game. It's much more fast-paced, much more physical, much more close to the NHL game because there's a lot more older players. The OHL or CHL as a whole is much more open, a lot more younger players, less overage type players as well. They have quotas on that. So, Tyler Clevin, I think, is ready for the National Hockey League. Not going to lie with you. But, especially if he's going to be a cornerstone part of the franchise, and you already have JBD, which hasn't even been mentioned. I mean, he's a part of the puzzle here, too. He's on a one-way deal. You have Hamonic, who's on a no-movement clause, so you can't drop him. And, I mean, you can't do that to a veteran, especially signing him for 2 years on a no-movement clause. You're not going to trade the guy, or you're not going to be able to anyways, or send him down. And then, that really leaves it to, should Ottawa just do the easy thing, don't risk losing anyone or pushing anyone out, send Tyler Clevin down to the AHL, let him dominate. And he will. He will dominate, but let him dominate in the AHL on a very good AHL team down in Belleville. They got a lot of good free agent acquisitions. I don't know if some people noticed, but like Matthew Highmore, I even mentioned as a fourth line option. There's a lot of great AHL talents that are fringe NHLers that are going to make that Belleville team a good team. I expect them to make the playoffs for sure with some of the additions they brought in. So I think Tyler Clevin starting the year at the very least in the AHL makes the most sense. No one's lost for free at that if that transaction is played out. And it never hurts. It really won't hurt his development. And worst case, he gets to dominate. Best case, eventually he's called up. And I do agree with you guys, though. What is Eric Brandstrom's future in Ottawa? I don't know. I mean, Clevin will be ready by this time next year, if not earlier, without a doubt. Ham next year for 2 more years, 1 more after this year. JBD, I mean, there's only 2 spots on that third pairing, and Clevin's going to have one of them. So I love Eric Brandstrom. I think he's a great defenseman. I think he should start the year on that third pairing, however, no doubt about it, just purely because he's cheap. And even if you trade him, there's still not enough space likely to sign Shane Pinto. So there's also that to consider. Oh, sorry about that. My light just moved. But the point very simply is, for Eric Brandstrom, this is a guy that's cheap for the team, is an analytics darling, and for at least the next year will help this team win, which is all that matters. So I stay, keep him here, plug him to the AHL, and then we'll see what happens during the year.
It really is. I mean, I mentioned the development over who's better. Like, they got to kind of throw that out the window. But Brandstrom is the epitome of development, right? Like, he, more than any other player, spent more time than in the AHL throughout this rebuild. Took his time to get in the NHL, finally had a full season there last year, established himself, stepped up when people got injured. And look, it sucks that it's got to come down to both of them. And Brennan, I know you mentioned like you could have, conceivably, this could be your bottom pairing. Let's be real here. I mean, I'm high on JBD as well. I think he needs to have a big camp, and obviously needs waivers. But Clevin's contract, along with the other one-way deals they have in JBD and Hamonic with the no movement clause, Brandstrom now obviously on a one-way, like there's just no room. So he has to come in and absolutely blow the doors off. Another wrinkle, though, for this battle that I like looking at is the Shane Pinto situation, right? I think Brandstrom's probably on like second on everyone's list in terms of who gets traded to make room for Pinto. The problem with Brandstrom, and I mentioned it today, like he makes $2 million. So if they trade him, let's say, just for a draft pick, is that even enough room to sign Pinto? I don't think so, man. Like, no. I think they have what, 200K in cap space right now, 100K. So you have what, 2.1, if that, to sign Pinto. Like, that's not enough.
Bailey potentially, remember, as well.
Exactly, right? Like, they don't have enough room to do anything. Like, Joseph makes the most sense at 2.9. You have a lot of wiggle room there. But anyway, like, it'll be a fascinating battle. The point is, to me, Tyler Clevin has to not just play better than Brandstrom. He's got to knock the socks off of everyone. Like, it's got to be, like you said, a consensus. He's been the best player on the defense. Like, I don't think that's crazy. Like, if he impressed us that much at the end of last season, I don't think it's crazy to say that he could. Again, though, I'm a big Eric Brandstrom guy as well. So it's an embarrassment of riches right now. It really feels like that. I'll ask you guys one thing here quickly before we get into our last battle. Would you be okay with Tyler Clevin, if he's ready, let's say, and just like that's the way it is, would you be okay with him kind of being a seventh defenseman on this team? Or would you rather him play in Belleville? I'll go to you first, Brendan.
I would rather him play in Belleville than be a seventh defenseman. I just think that, like, although, yeah, I love the way, like, this team needs to win, like, the expectations are there, but I think that development still has to play a role for a guy like Clevin, and I'd rather him be getting top pairing minutes in Belleville than sitting watching the games in Ottawa. Now, if he's playing the majority of games in Ottawa, then I'd kind of be okay with that, right? If he's a scratch every now and then, but I'd rather him be playing top pairing in Belleville than, every now and then in Ottawa.
Can I reword it? I meant more if let's say he's in Belleville, do you want him being the first call up, or is it kind of a situation where you want him marinating there all season? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you want him coming up to play 10 games, then back up and down, like, because that's probably what he'll do. I'm not
I'd
really
be
sure
okay
where I
with
sit.
that. Yeah, if somebody gets hurt, I'd be okay with calling him up to play, stints at a time. I think he should see NHL minutes just like Crookshank should this year.
For sure.
Yeah, but I mean it depends, right? Like I don't want him coming up to play like one game here and there necessarily, but if he's gonna play 5, 10 games at a time, like I'd be okay with that. Because I could see him coming in and playing 10 games when somebody's hurt, and then like the person doesn't get their job back because Tyler Clevin just stole it and he earned a full-time role, right? Like that can happen. So I'm okay with that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you have to call somebody in a quick pinch for emergency call up, you have Dylan Hetherington. You have a couple other guys that are NHL veterans. I think Larson's still down there in Belleville as well. You got Lassie Thompson, Manapalo, who, by the way, was also brought in through free agency, who probably will get an opportunity at some point, so especially for a game or two. So you don't want to disrupt the development of Tyler Clevin just for a game or two. But like Brendan said, I mean, if it's a 5, 10, 15, 20 game kind of stint, if there's a major injury, God forbid, Tyler Clevin obviously has to be called up, no doubt about that. So definitely on that same page. If it's a one game kind of thing, let him just stay in Belleville. Don't disrupt him. But if it's more than 5 or so games, it's worth the opportunity for him. And well, we also have to see, like you mentioned, Jack, how JBD does in camp as that seventh defenseman. If they even need to call him up, because if JBD can just step in there for the short term for a few games, I'd rather keep Clevin in the AHL anyways. Call up Hetherington and let him ride the bench for a few days or a few games, pardon me, and that's kind of where I would leave it at. Because once again, if Clevin's going to be up, he should be up permanently and playing important minutes. Otherwise, let him dominate in the AHL and just get better and better.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, and again, Tyler Clevin has a bright future in the NHL. Just it's up in the air if it'll be this season or not, and we'll look to watch him in preseason. That's a good battle to be watching. And it's not even, honestly, it's not even necessarily against Eric Branstrom. Like he could come in and outplay everyone, to be honest. And it's just more about his fit. So that's what I like about Tyler Clevin's situation this season. All right, let's go into the final one. This is the one that I picked, and I'm excited about this one. I think it's going to be a all season long battle, not just training camp, but for training camp alone, we can just look at the opening night and maybe the indication of who's starting the first preseason game gives us a bit of an indication on who's starting the first regular season game. But I'm going with the goaltenders. I'm going between the pipes for the best battle in training camp. Obviously, Jonas Korpisalo, the big fish free agent signing. One of the biggest contracts on July 1st dished out actually was from the Senators, which, believe it or not, is crazy to think about. $4 million at 5 years. Not anything to scoff at for Jonas Korpisalo. And then obviously Anton Forsberg coming off of double ACL injury or MCL, whatever it was. Same ligament in both knees. He'll be fun. Like, I honestly just want to see both of them not even battle each other, but just see where they're both at. So therefore it becomes a battle. For me personally right now, I'm leaning towards Forsberg because he's their guy. And not that he's going to play more games or whatever, but starting game one, give me Anton Forsberg in Carolina. He seems to play well in Carolina. I think he had that huge game a couple of years ago there. That's my pick. What about you guys? Because honestly, it's going to be a great discussion all year. Just fingers crossed they're both healthy. So Brendan, we will go to you first.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
We have the
I'm just
same
realizing.
name, so.
I'm realizing the name. The name
There's a couple times now.
You go ahead. You go ahead, Brandon.
You sure? Yeah, Brandon. Okay. Appreciate that, Brendan. Yeah. So look, I firstly I just have to mention Anton Forsberg, Jonas Korpisalo. They're buddies. They've won a championship before in Cleveland and AHL. So, like you mentioned, Jack, this is not really a battle. It's more of it's gonna be a shared kind of tandem here. And their masks, by the way, stunning. Gold cages. I mean, the Martian's back. I mean, my goodness, just absolute beautiful masks from these two goalies. So they're going to be winning on that aspect. Hopefully, they'll get the wins as well, where it really matters, of course, on the box score. But going back to the battle, look, I think Forsberg starting opening night is not a bad idea. Because Korpisalo, the splashy free agent, could start, the home opener, which is a matinee game against less of a good team, bit of a better position there for Korpisalo. If we're looking at the two goalies and who's going to start more, probably Korpisalo. This is the kind of guy that Los Angeles last year brought in to push them for the playoffs, and he helped them make the playoffs. And everyone talks about that playoff series against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Edmonton Oilers. I don't know about you guys. I literally watched every single game of that series. It's some of the best hockey I've ever watched. Literally every single shift was nearly a goal. It was end-to-end action. Not many goalies, even prime Carey Price wouldn't have stopped a lot of those shots. So I wouldn't look into that postseason performance by Korpisalo too much. I think Korpisalo is going to be the guy, though, like I just kind of mentioned. You don't sign him for 5 years for that reason. You don't give him that much money without thinking he's going to be the guy. He's also been a great goaltender throughout his entire NHL career, especially on some, we'll call it, to be nice, mid-Columbus Blue Jacket teams. So I think Korpisalo is the guy. I think his mask is stunning, which is going to help give him confidence, give him more wins as well. But I think no matter what, whoever's in the crease, whether it's, of course, Korpisalo or Forsberg, the Sens are going to have a good chance to win with one of those two in the net. So either way, we're in good hands. So, and that's something we couldn't have said the last few years, that's for sure. So it's great. It's a great position to be in if you're Ottawa.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that they don't have to play 7 different goaltenders again this year. That's my main key, because I think, again, we're talking about playoffs last year. I think 6 points, like if they could have just had one of their goalies stay healthy for more than they did, they probably would have been able to make it. Regardless, though, injuries happen, right? So it could happen again. But I like both goalies. Like we talked about it, Forsberg 2 years ago was one of the best goalies. Like in my mind, he was the best goalie aside from Ilya Sorokin in New York on non-playoff teams. He was just exceptional 2 years ago, Forsberg. So I think he could bounce back. Now, again, it's 2 MCL tears is no minor thing. Like he could very easily like re-injure, or maybe he's not the same form as he used to be. It happens, but being optimistic, Forsberg is someone who, if he can rebound to be, that form that he had 2 years ago, then Ottawa's going to be in a great spot with goalies. Even last year, he did well. Like he wasn't a bad goalie last year. He was probably average, I would say. He was also put in a tough spot because of the injuries. Talbot was hurt to start the year, so he was forced to step in there and play, right? Like it's tough for him, but he's a guy who seems to have a great attitude too. He's easy to cheer for. I'll put it that way for Forsberg. Korpisalo, I feel like they'll probably start Korpisalo on opening night, and the only reason why is because they just paid him big money, and I feel like Pierre Dorion, not that he necessarily makes a decision, but they're not going to want to slight Dorion the fact that he handed out $20 million, and then they aren't going to use the guy, because you already know that they're going to get backlash for that. Pierre's going to hear about it from the fans and from the league, and I can already see the comments about, oh, you just threw $20 million at a goalie, and then you're not going to use them, and I can just hear it now. So I would assume they're going to start him, but who knows, right? Like DJ Smith said the other day, it's going to be whoever's hot, whoever's going. Ideally, they're hot at the same time. You have a great tandem, right? You avoid fatigue. Both guys are going. You can kind of bounce back and forth. That is, in my mind, ideal. It would also be a great narrative because, like Brandon said, they won a championship together in Lake Erie. So it'd be kind of cool to see these two guys back together and pushing each other. Like you guys both said, it's not really a battle. It's like how do you put it? Like a friendly competition almost. Yeah. Like they're kind of going to be pushing each other to be better. There's not going to be any hard feelings there or anything. But yeah, either way, I mean, I think Korpisalo is going to play more games. I did have a bold prediction, though, in an article where I said Forsberg would play more games if they're both healthy. Just the fact that Forsberg, maybe he does rebound to that form, and then suddenly you've got, like, you've paid $20 million for Korpisalo, but Forsberg's, like, your guy, right? That'd be kind of funny, and it would kind of suck because you spent a lot of money on Korpisalo, but, like, how do you cheer against that, right? Like, if Forsberg steps up and he emerges as the number one guy, then go for it. Like, that's awesome, right? So, yeah, either way, though, I think the Sens are in a much better spot with goalies than they were with Talbot last year. Talbot proved to be inconsistent, just couldn't stay healthy. But even when he was healthy, he wasn't consistent in the net. So I'm hoping that's the number one key for goalies for me. Either way, consistency. Just don't, like when we had Ian Mendez on, he said that like you're going to get bad games from your goalies, but you have to be able to rely on them for like 80% of the season. Like your goalies are going to cost you a game here and there, sure, but you cannot think they're going to cost you, almost every night. Like you shouldn't be going into every game feeling like we're going to lose this because of our goalie, right? So number one, Korpisalo is my guy to start, but I'm really just hoping they form a good tandem and can push each other to be better.
Just on the point with Forsberg and the MCL injuries, I've torn my MCL before, not as major, of course, especially not in both knees. I understand as a goalie, your knees are the most important part of your body as a goaltender. You're going up and down, up and down, up and down. But the fact he didn't get surgery is a great sign. It's a fantastic sign. And the fact that he was already kind of ramping up lower body activities a month or two after the injury, or a few months after the injury, I believe he didn't even have he wasn't on crutches after a month. I mean, it looked like a very maybe strain, like a minor kind of strain. or tear, partial tear. So I'm not a doctor by any means. I'm just kind of speaking from personal experience. The fact he didn't get surgery and he, rather do natural rehab, and the fact that he was not on crutches after a month or two, I believe. I mean, that's a very good sign. Once again, for goaltenders, there's a lot of wear and tear with the knees. So once again, the fact he didn't get surgery there is a great sign. And I don't think there's going to be any real concern there for Forsberg in the knees because, he had a full 6-7 months to fully recover. And once again, you don't often get surgery for the MCL. ACL, of course. If it's an MCL tear, most people like myself just elect to do natural rehab and physical therapy. But as athletes, often they elect to get surgery. It's just quicker and better, some might say. But the fact he didn't, I think, says a lot. So I'm not too worried about that at all.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going on that road because I've had the tinfoil hat theory for a little bit, but neither of us had torn our MCLs before. So my theory was because he tore both, is it because I've heard from people when they tear one or the other or whatever, one leg gets so much stronger when you're rehabbing.
That's true.
So is there a truth maybe to like he tore both? So like in a way it could be like it sounds crazy. It could be better because he doesn't have to deal with the unbalance, which I get as a goalie. Like imagine having one leg way stronger than the other would be crazy. Like you're not like a player where you're leaning on your right leg more to shoot if you're a lefty. Like you have to be balanced as a goalie. So maybe that's tinfoil hat for me. I don't know.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'm not gonna say I have struggle still with my knees. Like I'm doing pretty good, especially since I'm young, which I'm lucky about. If I was older, it would have been much worse. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bit of a slant sometimes, or sometimes my knee acts up. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know if it's necessarily a good or a better thing, but it most certainly could be a beneficial thing. Once again, I'm not a doctor, but that is definitely true. I mean, I definitely sometimes lean more to one side than the other because of that. And yeah, my knee definitely acts up sometimes. So, I think, I don't have the tinfoil hat on as much. I'll have to watch your 6-part documentary on the conspiracy here, but hopefully you're right, and hopefully that kind of pays off for him that way.
That was all just me being a big Anton Forsberg guy. So yeah, it'll be a great battle to look at throughout camp for me. And obviously it's hard because you're not going to see them at the same time against the same team. Different situations. I believe Forsberg starting tomorrow, so Sunday against the Leafs, and Korpisalo will be starting on the road in Montreal on Wednesday, with Sogard taking the Monday game against the Leafs. So Sogard's another guy to watch. Like just goaltending in general, I want to be looking at. So fellas, that's some good breakdowns of some camp stuff there. I'm happy that we got to get through all that. So Brandon, just give a little plug to anything you got going on, obviously, and then just say a shout to the Sens Talk faithful.
Well, once again, boys, I mean, absolute pleasure. Can't say it enough. The guys, you guys, the work that you guys are doing with this podcast on social media and stuff is absolutely electric. Really looking forward to collaborating a lot more in the future. Shout out to Sens Talk faithful, by the way, that are here right now. Make sure to comment below. Subscribe to these guys as well. They're great guys. And yeah, we got a lot of things going on right now. Follow us on Twitter or X, at SensTalk_. We're, of course, on Facebook as well and on Instagram at SensTalk. And SensTalk.ca, website 2.0 will be out very, very, very soon, probably in the next couple of weeks. And my goodness, if you've seen our website right now, it was made by a 15-year-old Brennan Plant. So you're going to see a crazy change. I am so excited. It looks beautiful. It's stunning. SensTalk.ca out very soon. And of course, youtube.com/SensTalk. You'll see me after every single game and probably more often than you'd like. So if you like what you saw here and, you like Sens hockey and talking some Sens or Sens Talk, go to those places and you'll find me there.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for episode 41 of the Everyday Sens podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, head over to Sens Talk on YouTube as well and do the exact same thing. And catch us over on Sens Talk's YouTube page in the next week, whatever. We're going to figure out a time and do part 2 of this series throughout training camp, just covering all the headlines and storylines going into a very, very big season for the Ottawa Senators. So thank you, Brandon, again for joining us, and we will see you all for episode 42.